of some Confederate monuments. The time has come. Not all of them, not every single one of them, certainly not in cemeteries. I just want the process to be historical, deliberative, and based on research.
And including the people who live there.
Yes. If all politics is local, all memory is also local.
A memorial landscape turned minefield is familiar terrain for David Blight and Yale University.
Was there some resistance to changing the name?
Oh yes, there was resistance to name changing among alumni, among some.
Earlier this year, the university renamed a dormitory dedicated to former Vice President John C. Calhoun, citing what it called Calhoun's primary legacy as one of the 19th century's most ardent defenders of slavery. But determining a historical figure's primary legacy is where things get tricky.
I'm sure you've heard this, but this university has a very conspicuous connection to someone who made a lot of money trading slaves. And his name is?
Yale. Yeah, well, I can assure you, as our previous dean said, the name Yale is not on the tape.
Yes, Yale is named for Elihu Yale, a slave trader. So, where to draw the line? After all, 10 of our first 12 presidents were slave owners. Some warn against drawing lines at all.
We need to remember this nation exists by the blood and the sacrifice and the courage of many, many men. Many got it correctly, many misgot it.
Virginia Tech history professor emeritus James Robertson isn't new to this debate. In 1961, President Kennedy tapped Robertson to lead the Civil War Centennial Commission.
We need to learn from the mistakes others made, just as well as we need to be inspired by the good things that people have done.
And Robertson believes there was a lot of good in Confederate General Robert E. Lee.
People forget that after the Civil War, Lee became the greatest voice for reconciliation in this country. He preached peace and harmony.
Robertson joined us on Richmond's Monument Avenue, a grand boulevard in the once Confederate capital, designed to pay tribute to the rebel leaders.
This looks pretty clearly like he's being honored for his military service, not as a peacemaker.
It certainly does. My regret is that Lee is not in civilian clothes, which he would have been in his last 5 years.
Half a mile from Lee is the Jefferson Davis Monument, a tribute as much to the secessionist government, it seems, as it is to the former Confederate president.
So Davis leads the South into a war for its independence, very much aware that he was fighting to keep slavery legal. So if one has to go, this is probably the one to go.
If we look down and we see Stonewall Jackson way in the distance, we see all this green space. Is all that green space one solution?
Absolutely. There's plenty of room for monuments here. Monuments commemorating other aspects of the war. Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass.
But simply adding statues of African-American icons isn't a solution, says Brian Stevenson. He still remembers what it felt like seeing Confederate monuments as a kid.
I always thought, despite the fact that they were copper or bronze, that they were screaming at me.